Thor 4 is about to drop some love and thunder on us, along with a handful of new deities including Zeus and the Olympians. With this addition to the ever-growing pantheon of gods and godlike beings in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, many of whom are sure to be butchered by Gore, the aptly named God Butcher in the new film, we thought now would be a good time to recap all the divine dudes and cosmic chicks that rule the MCU multiverse with an iron fist. No, literally the opposite of that guy. It's time to cram it. Now, to clarify, there's no strict definition of what a god is in the MCU. They kind of throw the word around willy-nilly to describe all kinds of beings of various powers and abilities and domains.
A celestial like a god?
Small G, son.
But from what we can gather from trailers and clips and stills released for Thor Love and Thunder, it seems like Gore is mainly concerned with gods that are worshipped by beings, human and otherwise. Now, we don't yet know of any alien gods in the MCU, but we have been introduced to various thingamabeings that have been deemed gods by humans throughout history, so we'll start with those. Okay, here's Earth. You know it, you love it, all your favorite movies are from there. As we said, humans have worshipped lots of different beings as gods throughout history. The first of these beings that we learn about in the MCU are the Asgardians, so called because they inhabit a celestial body known as Asgard. You see, Asgard and Earth, aka Midgard, are just 2 of 9 realms according to the Asgardians. Along with Asgardians like Thor, Loki, Odin, Hela, Valkyrie, and so on, these 9 realms also include worlds inhabited by elves, dwarves, giants, trolls, fire demons, and the occasional dragon. So either Tolkien was secretly from there, or it's a very derivative universe. All these beings appear to be on equal footing as far as power and abilities, as they're constantly fighting each other for supremacy over the 9 realms. They live extremely long lives, but they're not immortal. They can be killed, as we see with Frigga and Hela, and they eventually age and die, as we see with Odin. They can also be easily subdued by enhanced humans, as the Hulk makes painfully clear in the first Avengers film.
Puny god.
Another group of gods worshipped by humans are the Eniad, the ancient Egyptian gods that were introduced in Moon Knight. These gods are more like your typical ancient deities, responsible for controlling the skies, shepherding souls to the afterlife, and possessing humans who they call avatars. Some even imbue their powers into their avatars, like the titular Moon Knight and the Scarlet Scarab. They appear to be more powerful than the Asgardians, as they can grow to enormous sizes, travel between planes of existence, and some, like Amit, can actually see into humans' hearts and judge whether they are good or evil. Now, it's unclear exactly where these gods live when they're not possessing human avatars, except for one line in episode 3 when Khonshu, speaking through Mark Spector, says this:
Return from the opulence of the Overvoid before you lose this realm!
This is the first mention of the Overvoid in the MCU, and it's a name taken directly from the Moon Knight comics. It's assumed to be the same place as the celestial Heliopolis where the Egyptian gods reside in older Thor comics, and Thor actually travels there in some of these. So we can assume that the Overvoid is another celestial realm much like Asgard, but likely with more pyramids and obelisks and stuff. While we don't get to see the Overvoid in the series, we do see other planes of existence, like the Duat, where the hippo goddess Tawaret shepherds souls to the afterlife, and the Field of Reeds, where souls who are deemed as balanced get to spend eternity. These planes are related to the ancestral plane from Black Panther, which we know from this line.
An afterlife, not the afterlife. You'd be surprised how many intersectional planes of untethered consciousness exist.
Yeah.
Like the ancestral plane. Oh, just gorgeous.
In fact, the panther god Bast, who was said to have blessed the first Black Panther with the heart-shaped herb, is the same figure as Bastet, the panther goddess of the Eniad, at least according to real-world mythology. Wonder when Marvel's gonna get to the New Testament. Anyway, a still image from Thor Love and Thunder further confused the issue by showing actress Akosia Sabat, who is credited as Bastet God, donning very panther-esque garb and sitting next to Jane Foster and Valkyrie at some sort of council of the gods. Is Bastet pulling double duties in both Egyptian and Wakandan mythologies? Is this actually an avatar of Bastet from the Eniad? Is it a whole other Bastet entirely? My entire system of belief rests on this! Another group of beings that humans have called gods throughout history are the Eternals. These may have actually been the first beings to visit Earth and be worshipped by humans as gods, but we saved them for last for a very important reason that we'll get to soon. 10 of these Eternals arrived on Earth around 5000 BC, and have aided and guided the evolution of the human race ever since. They worked their way into the pantheons of most ancient civilizations, except I guess the Norse and Egyptians, because they, didn't get around to it. Eternals have defended humans against a race of monstrous beings called Deviants, who also work their way into human mythologies as demons or monsters. If you recall, the Eternals and Deviants were both created by the Celestials, who also happen to create all life and matter in the universe, which I guess would include the 9 realms and the Asgardians, as well as the Overvoid and the Eniad, and any other gods or goddesses that fit into that same mold, which we assume would include any Olympians too. So Celestials are massive beings of immense power, harnessing the energy of sentient life to create new stars and even entire galaxies. Some of them, it seems, are immortal, as Arishem the Judge has existed since before time and space itself. Yet, they can be born through a process called emergence, which happens when a host planet seeded by Arishem has enough sentient life to give energy to a new celestial, as Earth did to Tiamat before the emergence was stopped by the Eternals. They can also apparently be killed, as we see the head of a dead celestial in Guardians of the Galaxy, which becomes an important location known as Nowhere. Also, Peter Quill's dad, Ego the Living Planet, is also a celestial, supposedly, even though he doesn't look like any of the other ones, and he wasn't born by way of an emergence type situation.
I don't know where I came from exactly. First thing I remember is flickering, adrift in the cosmos, utterly and entirely alone.
He also doesn't seem to share the full powers of other Celestials. I mean, he makes himself into a planet, but the other Celestials create multiple planets and stars and entire galaxies, so I don't know, maybe some kind of lesser Celestial? A Celestial? Whatever, he dies at the end of that movie anyway, so we don't have to think about him anymore. Now we know Celestials are going to reappear in Thor Love and Thunder because we see 2 of them in one of the latest trailers. Whether they're just hanging around to see if the gods get butchered or not, or if they're going to be directly involved in some way, remains to be seen. We also see in the trailers several statues depicting other cosmic entities, one of which is Uatu the Watcher, whom we met in the animated series What If. The Watcher exists outside of the multiverse in a place called the Nexus of All Realities, and can see into all possible universes at once. But as his name suggests, he mainly just creepy peeps at all these universes, having sworn an oath to never get directly involved. He breaks this oath only once that we know of in the MCU, when Infinity Ultron threatens to destroy the entire multiverse. His powers are seemingly limitless, granting him the ability to alter time and space and reality itself. The only being that even comes close to challenging his power is Ultron once he gains the power of all 6 Infinity Stones. Speaking of Infinity Stones, the other cosmic entities depicted in these statues have been identified by fans as Death, Infinity, Eternity, and Entropy. We see these figures in Guardians of the Galaxy when we first learn about the Infinity Stones. They're depicted in a relief from the temple vault on Morag surrounding the stones, suggesting that they may have been the ones to actually forge the stones from the 6 singularities that existed before the creation of the universe. This would mean that they're at least as powerful as Celestials, if not more so, and the fact that they share a space with the Watcher in whatever this location is would suggest that they have equal power to him, meaning that they may also exist outside the multiverse. In the comics, these abstract entities exist within each universe, being ruled over by another cosmic entity called the Living Tribunal, who exists outside the multiverse. We see a statue of the Living Tribunal in this same space, and we've seen hints about him throughout the MCU. First in Doctor Strange, Karl Moto introduces a relic called the Staff of the Living Tribunal, but he doesn't say much about the being that the staff is of. In Multiverse of Madness, Doctor Strange and America Chavez pass through a dimension that shows several statues of the Living Tribunal, and we also see the head of one of these statues in the Loki series in the Void at the End of Time, where everything pruned by the Time Variance Authority ends up. Now, we haven't mentioned the TVA yet, even though it does have celestial power, because, well, everyone who works there is actually just a variant of a human from a pruned reality, and even the guy who created it is just some guy who figured out the multiverse. So yeah, none of these people would technically qualify as gods, even though as a whole, the agency does have power over gods, like all the variants of Loki, and they keep the Infinity Stones as paperweights, which would mean that they're even more powerful than the Watcher, maybe? But again, there's no individual at the TVA that wields all this power, so we're not counting them as a god. There are other cosmic beings from various other dimensions that we learn about, like Dormammu from the Dark Dimension, and his niece Clea, who we've only just met in the mid-credits scene of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. There's also various beings referred to as demons, many of whom we met in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hellstrom series. Remember those? The first demon, according to the Multiverse of Madness, was a creature named That, who created the Darkhold and prophesied the coming of the Scarlet Witch. But, much like the term god, the MCU doesn't really put a strict definition on the term demon. For example, Surtur from Thor Ragnarok is also called a fire demon, but it's unlikely that he has anything to do with the demons who possess humans, or with What's-His-Face the first demon. And we haven't seen any hints that any of these creatures are going to show up in Thor Love and Thunder, probably because Gore is more interested in butchering gods than demons. The movie looks like it borrows heavily from comic writer Jason Aaron's run of Thor God of Thunder, which includes Gore the God Butcher and his plot to kill all the gods. There's even one shot in the trailers that pulls directly from the comics, showing Falagar the Behemoth as one of the gods killed by the God Butcher. In the comics, Falagar is the god of an alien race, and we see Thor interacting with other alien races in the trailers, so we may be meeting more alien gods in this movie. Specifically, we see him and the Guardians of the Galaxy defending a race of blue-skinned aliens who may be the Centaurians, of which Yondu is a member, but they may also be the Indigarians, who appear in the same run of comics. The gods of Indigar disappear at some point, leaving the planet to become a barren wasteland, until one little Indigaran girl prays to Thor to bring them rain, and he does. In doing this, he discovers that the gods of Indigar were also victims of Gore the God Butcher, so this could be the inciting incident of the whole movie, but, you know, don't quote me on that. No matter what, it seems like we're definitely going to be meeting more gods, goddesses, and cosmic beings in Thor Love and Thunder, and I'd hope some of them get butchered, or Gore is terrible at picking nicknames. We're also likely to see more of the cosmology of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and possibly even the multiverse as it continues to unravel thanks to Sylvie killing off He Who Remains at the end of Loki, and throwing the whole TVA into chaos. Will we finally see Kang the Conqueror lording over the entire multiverse? Will we see the living Tribunal or any of the other cosmic entities in the flesh? Will Thor and Jane Foster finally get back together after all these years? I don't know, man. I haven't seen the movie yet. Stop asking me questions. What do I look like? A god?